The camera then scrolls down to reveal a classic messy, late-night gaming setup, a dark bedroom centered around a single glowing computer, monitor, a keyboard, and an open blue can of Cask Cold brew beer resting on the desk. The narrator explains that he simply fell asleep after work while drinking beer and playing a game just like any other ordinary night. However, the next panel shifts drastically to a back view of a heavily muscled warrior, standing on a jagged cliffside looking out over an incredibly vast, harsh, and jagged mountain range under a stormy sky. The narrator realizes in complete shock that he has literally been transmigrated right into the world of the game itself. Immediately thrust into the chaos, a side profile panel of a panicked, silver-haired priestess appears as she screams out, "Sir Kadim, be careful! Stronger demons are swarming us!" We then see Kadim, now an absolute tank of a man covered in intricate tribal tattoos and wearing leather armor, calmly declaring, "I'll take care of them," as he grips a massive, wicked-looking halberd. The action explodes as Kadim hurls himself off the cliff directly into a swarm of rocky, red-eyed demons, swinging his weapon to create devastating, glowing red crescent slashes that completely rip the monsters to shreds in a shower of blood and debris. A wide shot captures him standing victorious amidst the smoke wiping sweat from his forehead. A speech bubble reveals his internal thoughts, as expected of the demon realm facing high-level demons right from the start. The path to the great demon is going to be tougher than I thought. He glances over his shoulder, bracing himself because he knows he is about to get a massive earful from his companion. Sure enough, the next panel introduces Melissa the Mage, a short-tempered girl in a red cloak and white shirt, standing with her hands on her hips and yelling at the top of her lungs, "Kadim, I told you not to rush in alone like that!" Before Kadim can even formulate an excuse, a large, gray rock monster lunges into the frame only to be instantly cleaved apart by a brilliant flash of light. The savior is revealed to be Hero Gale, a dashing blonde swordsman in full knightly armor, dynamically sheathing his blade, while coolly stating, "Save the scolding for after the battle is over. Dealing with monsters comes first." Melissa looks visibly irritated, holding a swirling ball of flame in her hand while muttering that Gale is so frustratingly by the book. The perspective then shifts back to the silver-haired priestess Cyril, who is holding her hands together in deep prayer, surrounded by a gentle, glowing, yellow aura. She expresses her deep concern that Sir Kadim is pushing his body way too hard for their sakes. Standing right behind her is the party's Priest Gordon, a cheerful-looking man holding a massive holy mace. He smiles and tells her not to worry too much, because Kadim always has his reasons, and Cyril concedes that she might just be overthinking it. The two religious characters quickly agree that they should focus on wiping out the rest of the monsters before having a serious chat with Kadim, while the warrior watches them from a distance as magical explosions rock the battlefield. The narrative pauses for a brief character introduction, displaying a montage of the party members' faces as Kadim explains his identity. He reveals that he is the vanguard of the heroes' party, specifically formed to defeat the great demon, and is recognized as the great warrior of Atala, the god of struggle and the wilderness. A tight close-up of his intense eyes and stern mouth leads into an unexpected twist as a ghostly glowing silhouette of a modern office worker wearing glasses and a tie appears over his eye. The screen flashes with the text, "Also, I am a transmigrator in this game." Before explaining that the game's original plot was incredibly simple, a chosen hero receives a divine revelation, gathers a party of companions, and slays the great demon. Panels flash showing a fiery, hellish pit of lava, a giant, black-winged demonic entity with a glowing red core and a terrifying wall of grotesque, multi-eyed monster faces. Kadim notes that while normal players might love an adventurous fantasy with these characters, it is an absolute living nightmare for a modern person who has never even wrung a chicken's neck. To survive this brutal world, Kadim has to rely on a terrifying, unique trait. System card titled Blood Berserker. The card's description states, drink a demon's blood to gain a special buff for a certain period of time. We see a graphic panel of Kadim throwing his head back and chugging dark demon blood, followed by a terrifying close-up of his face turning demonic, his teeth sharpening, and his eyes bursting with veins, as the word harsh echoes across the screen. He goes absolutely feral, diving back into battle, swinging his halberd frantically through a sea of monsters while screaming internally to just kill a little more so he can leave this damn world behind. The panels become increasingly unhinged, showing him covered in thick black blood, literally chewing on a severed demon arm. With a crazed, bloodshot grin, completely lost to a terrifying madness, he stands atop a massive mountain of mangled red-eyed demon corpses laughing, like a maniac desperate to escape back to reality even a single day faster. Suddenly, a powerful, high-ranking female demon, lord with horns and red hair, leaps onto the pile of corpses, and an completely crazed Kadim lunges forward, roaring that he will devour every last one of them and drink every drop of their blood. Just as Kadim is about to tear the demon apart, a brilliant, blinding flash of white light erupts across the panels, cutting through his bloodlust. Word bubbles shatter the silence, screaming, "Stop, Kadim! Sir Kadim! Snap out of it!" Kadim's eyes suddenly clear and his face twists into utter horror as the demonic illusion fades away. He looks down and realizes with absolute dread that he isn't choking a monster at all. He has his massive stone-mutated hand wrapped tightly around the throat of his own companion, Melissa the mage. Melissa is hovering in the air, gasping for breath with tears in her eyes, her magical protective barrier completely shattering under his grip as she weakly chokes out his name. Kadim drops her in absolute shock, staring at his trembling, blood-stained hands as a system notification pops up to reveal the hidden curse of his trait. Due to the creeping demonic energy, you will gradually lose your sanity. Has it really gotten to the point where I can't even recognize my own comrades? He drops to his knees in a pool of blood, clutching his face in deep despair as he realizes the casual game description has become a terrifying reality that is actively consuming his mind. Melissa collapses into his arms, weakly smiling despite her injuries, and gently tells him not to blame himself because he has been the one protecting them this entire time, so now it is their turn to protect him. Kadim looks down, weeping as he mutters an apology. Cyril and Gordon step forward, with Gordon vowing that they will do everything in their power to make sure he doesn't lose himself to the madness, even jokingly threatening to beat him back to his senses if he goes wild again. Gale steps into the frame, his armor battered and covered in blood, and asks if everyone has rested enough. He turns to Kadim, flashing a confident, heroic smile, and extends an armored hand to lift him up, stating that they must defeat the great demon together and save the world. Kadim grasps Gale's hand in a tight, emotional handshake, and the narrator explains that despite their bodies and minds being torn to tattered rags, they pushed through to the end. The screen cuts to black with the words, "At long last," before exploding into a panel of an enraged Gale screaming Kadim's name as a final battle reaches its climax. In a dramatic sequence, a completely berserk, glowing-eyed Kadim leaps high into the air, raising his weapon above his head to strike down a massive, red-horned demon lord. He unleashes a colossal, swirling vortex of fire and energy that completely incinerates the final boss. Gale looks up at the clearing sky, sighing in relief. Finally, as the towering demon crumbles into dust. Melissa, leaning heavily on her massive book, asks if it is truly over, and Gordon smiles warmly, attributing their victory to Elga's grace. Suddenly, Melissa's eyes widen in sheer shock as a brilliant holy white light begins to rain down from the heavens, completely illuminating the cavern. Cyril cries out, asking what is going on and wondering where Sir Kadim is. Through the blinding light, Gale catches sight of Kadim's silhouette walking away from the party toward a massive ancient stone archway. Gale screams at him to stop asking how he can just walk into a mysterious portal when he doesn't even know what's on the other side. Kadim stops in his tracks, turning his head slightly to flash his comrades one last incredibly soft and peaceful smile. His final words to them are deeply moving. "It was an honor to be with you all in person, not just watching from behind a screen. My comrades!" He steps completely into the light, leaving his weeping friends behind as the portal seals shut. Walking down a dark, quiet corridor, the narrator enjoys a moment of pure relief, planning out his return to normal life first, grabbing a freezing cold beer, then sleeping like a log in a real bed and swearing an absolute oath to never play a medieval fantasy game ever again. He notes that while it hurts that he couldn't say a proper goodbye, he has to accept reality. He spots a giant set of glowing white doors at the end of the tunnel, labeling it as the definitive exit back to reality, where he will finally be free. He pushes the doors open, gasping heavily as the light floods his vision. But instead of waking up in his apartment, his eyes widen in absolute, unadulterated horror. His face twists into a broken, sweating, terrifying grin as a guttural, hysterical laugh forces its way out of his throat. The final panels pull back to show his lone silhouette standing in front of a blinding explosive. Golden light as massive text violently fills the screen, restarting the game and New Game Plus. The prisoners are being marched down a trail through a vibrant green valley, heavily guarded by soldiers carrying spears while a flashy, holy knight decked out in shining gold and white armor leads the pack on a majestic white horse looking like he spends more time polishing his spear than actually using it. Behind the glitz and glamour, reality sinks in as we see a close-up of rough-looking, hands firmly bound in, thick metal handcuffs with the clanking sound practically echoing through the valley while the caravan moves forward alongside a covered wooden cart which is noticeably stained with blood. Naturally, the prisoners start losing their minds with one guy shouting desperately that he is innocent. And the one who killed that bitch was the baker's son, while right below him a grumpy old man with a massive white beard chimed in with his own excuse that he really only stole one bronze ring and didn't even know the silver necklace was there. Of course, the guards aren't having any of it, and one of them snaps, turning around with a furious face to yell at the prisoners to be quiet while giving the old man a piercing glare as a nearby prisoner looks completely defeated, letting out a heavy, visible ch while the guard turns away muttering to himself that this trash loves to run their mouths. But wait, the complaints aren't over as another prisoner, with messy brown hair and a worried expression, speaks up saying, "Excuse me, soldier, I've truly been wronged," making the guard look back over his shoulder, thoroughly annoyed, asking, "What do you want now?" The man gestures to his cuffs, pleading his case that he never sold demonic byproducts, and someone must have planted them to frame him, asking to meet the person who inspected his bag, while the guard just stares at him in dead silence as the merchant continues sweating bullets, thinking sometimes there are guys who frame the innocent to pad their own achievements. At that moment, the merchant looks ahead at the holy knight on his horse and thinks task for a young kid to be pulling this kind of stunt already, but no matter how young he is, a holy knight is still a holy knight, and if I mess this up, it's my head on the line. Sensing the disrespect, the guard's mouth twists into an angry scowl, revealing his teeth as he roars, "How dare you doubt a holy knight of Elga," making the poor merchant flinch hard immediately, backtracking, saying, "And no, of course not." The guard dismisses him coldly, saying, "If you're innocent, you'll be released safely, so return to your spot." And as the merchant awkwardly ambles back into line, the guard watches him, thinking it's a shame, but since a holy knight was directly involved, he's unlikely to survive. So he hopes he's born with a better status in his next life. Then the guard looks back to check on the real star of the show, wondering how they even captured that barbarian, as we finally get a good look at our protagonist Kadim walking right behind the merchant with a serious, downcast expression, messy dark hair and sweet mother of Jim goals, and absolutely shredded muscular chest and 8-pack abs, while wearing a fur loincloth, with his massive hands bound by a heavy chain. As the chains clank on the road, Kadim looks around completely bewildered, thinking, what in the world is going on, because this body feels familiar, but all the power he built up before is gone, while the madness and guilt that ate away at his mind also seem to have vanished. He remembers his past life as a terrifying, red-eyed demonic warrior clad in dark armor, but snaps back to reality, realizing that, according to that damn message that said New Game Plus, he must have started the game over, but still he doesn't get it, because even back in reality, the game never started this way. Suddenly, a voice breaks his inner monologue as the old white-bearded thief looks up at him, saying, "Hey there," while extending a wrinkled hand holding out a strange dried root, telling him to chew on this while they walk to make it less boring. Kadim just stares at him blankly, so the old man smiles warmly, adding that he was once helped by some barbarians a long time ago, and seeing him reminds him of them, so it's not much of a repayment, but this is all he has. Kadim accepts the root, holding it between his shackled hands as the old man asks how he got caught, and the barbarian casually pops it into his mouth, chewing away as he answers simply that he doesn't know. The old man sighs, saying, "I see, because the holy knights and priests of the empire are too hostile towards heretics, and believing in a different god isn't a sin, you know." This triggers another realization for Kadim, who asks, "The empire, there's an empire on this continent," making the old man stop dead in his tracks, looking at him like he has two heads, asking, "Don't tell me you don't know of the Lucanian Empire." Kadim thinks Lucanian, wasn't that a kingdom in the center of the continent, while the old man chuckles, saying, "A kingdom, I heard they used to call it that a long time ago, a long time ago." Kadim's eyes widen as he connects the dots, wondering if he could have fallen into a parallel world with a slightly different setting, before pushing the thought aside to ask, "So where are we going?" The old man's expression turns deadly serious, explaining that once they arrive in Lucaon, the other prisoners, and he will be summoned before the judges of Elga, and Kadim will probably face the Inquisition. Kadim thinks they won't kill me right away, That's a relief, but the old man panics. At his calm demeanor yelling, "What's there to be relieved about?" Because they're madmen addicted to torture. We get a horrifying flashback of a heretic, chained up in a dark dungeon being tortured with a red-hot iron rod by a hooded cultist as the old man warns that when they see a heretic like him, they'll treat him like a fun new toy, driving nails into his gums, then pouring boiling molten iron into his nostrils. Suddenly, out of nowhere, wham, the arrogant holy knight charges in on his horse and brutally drives his spear straight through the old man's chest, making blood splatter everywhere. As the old man gasps his final breath, his face twisted in absolute agony, the knight pulls his bloody spear back, raises it high into the blue sky, and barks to the crowd to listen up because anyone who insults a knight of Elga must wash away their sins with death. The knight turns his horse around its hooves, trampling the dirt, and glares down at Kadim, asking, "Hey, barbarian, was it you who caused this commotion? Because if you don't want to end up like him, bow your head and beg for forgiveness." Kadim just stares back with cold, lethal intensity while the knight smirks, arrogantly saying, "If you beg, I might let you live," but Kadim's expression doesn't change a bit, infuriated by the silence. The knight's veins pop as he screams, "How dare a mere heretic mock me like this? This is blasphemy," before charging forward, swinging his glowing blue sword right at Kadim's face. But Kadim doesn't even flinch, and at the last microsecond, he raises his shackled hands and snap, he catches the glowing blade bare-handed between his iron cuffs. The knight's jaw drops as he tries to pull his weapon back, sweating profusely and screaming to let go, but Kadim looks up with a terrifying smug grin and says, "Well, if you insist." He opens his hands, letting the blade go, which sends the knight off balance, stumbling backward on his horse, so furious and humiliated the knight screeches, "You damned heretical bastard! I'll pass judgment upon you." The knight's eyes widen in pure terror as Kadim suddenly leaps high into the sky, clenching his fist, and with the power of a meteor, he smashes his fist downward, creating a massive shockwave that shatters the ground, throwing dirt and smoke everywhere. When the dust clears, the horse is knocked out on the grass, and the Golden Knight is face down in the dirt, completely defeated, but he is not done yet. The knight staggers up, points his sword to the heavens, and a massive beam of holy light shoots down from the clouds as he screams, "Oh, Elga, master of eternal light, allow your knight to strike down this minion of vile demons. In Elga's name, I shall pass judgment upon you, heretic." His sword glows with blinding energy as he launches a massive, unavoidable magical blast straight at Kadim, who raises his arms to block, thinking, I can't dodge this." Boom, the explosion tears Kadim's chains to pieces, sending him flying backward, crashing hard into the merchant's wooden cart, completely smashing it to splinters. The knight walks through the smoke, completely confident in his victory, and scoffs that to think you survived that attack, I suppose your durability is as brutish as you look. Meanwhile, Kadim stands up, clutching a glowing blue wound on his chest, and checks his hands, thinking, even with all my abilities reset and only my unique trait, Blood Berserker, remaining to be struggling against a guy like him, because I wouldn't be struggling this much if even a low-level demon was here, so how do I get out of this situation? But then his nose twitches and he looks over at the wrecked cart, catching a scent, thinking, wait, could this smell be? Because inside the broken wooden box, a dark pool of thick blood is leaking out. The knight walks closer, raising his sword for the final blow, saying, "Barbarian, I acknowledge your strength, but this is as far as you go, so receive forgiveness from the god Elga through your death." But right as he prepares to strike, a foul, overpowering stench hits the air, making the knight freeze with his eyes wide with disgust, screaming, "Ugh, what is that smell?" Suddenly, Kadim starts giggling, he before bursting into a roaring laugh. "Ha ha," making the knight snap, "What's so funny? Have you gone insane before your death?" Kadim's smile turns incredibly menacing as he glares at the rookie knight, looking down at the broken cart and saying, "The god Elga you all worship has chosen me, not you, you rookie holy knight." With a sudden violent motion, Kadim rips the floorboards of the cart apart, plunging his hand inside, and pulls out the severed, horrifying green head of a massive goblin demon with blood dripping everywhere. The demonic energy surges into Kadim's body, causing the wound on his chest to glow bright blue as his lips curl into a sinister, victorious smile, because the demon's face is frozen in horror, and the tide of the battle has officially turned.